Hi, everybody. My name is Carl Darden, and I'd like to welcome and thank all of you for joining us today on Navy Sports Central. I'm your host, and this is the official podcast of the Navy Sports Nation, where we take a deeper dive into Navy sports. It is still fall on the calendar, but some of the Navy winter sports are already getting their seasons underway. That means both swimming and diving teams are back in the water looking to defend their Patriot League titles, so we're going to check in to see what's going on with them. And with the fall sports season beginning to wind down, the Mids are looking at key star matches in both volleyball and men's rugby, and we'll also celebrate the men's cross-country team's third consecutive Patriot League championship. Finally, in our deep dive segment, we'll be featuring one of the Mids' most consistently high-performing teams. They've won 6 Patriot League titles in the last 8 years, and I'll be joined by their coach to talk about the program. All this plus our question of the day and midwatch segments are coming up, so please stay with us. Okay, here we go with episode 56. Whether you are a returning listener or checking us out for the first time, I really appreciate you being here. I'll tell you what, we're going to start in reverse order from what I covered in the intro as far as the sports update goes, and that means leading with the men's cross-country team. They secured the Mids' first Patriot League title of the sports season last weekend at the Bucknell University campus, and there really wasn't a whole lot of suspense to it either. Murphy Smith won the individual title, while Sam Keeney and Andrew Kirkland finished right behind him, giving the Mids the top 3 spots on the podium. They finished with 37 points, Army was second with 50 points, and Boston University came in third with 56. Now, remember, in cross-country, the low score wins, so in the championship meet, points were assigned according to how the first 5 runners finished, so you can see how taking the top 3 spots can help nail down the win. Next up for the team is the Mid-Atlantic Regionals on November the 10th, which will be held on the Lehigh University campus. Now let's see what's going on with men's rugby. They posted a couple of solid wins over Air Force and Notre Dame College over the last couple of weeks. By the way, I thought it was interesting that both of those teams are nicknamed the Falcons, and they played them on consecutive weeks. But anyway, the Mids got off to kind of a slow start in each of those games. In fact, they were down 14-0 against Notre Dame before the offense really got going. They ended up scoring 50 points while shutting out the Falcons in the second half. And by the way, the final score was 50-19. And the team beat Air Force the previous week by a score of 50-8 after falling behind 8-3. This weekend, the team travels to State College to take on Penn State, and then they wrap up the fall season with the star match against Army on November the 10th. That will be on the road, and the Mids really need to come away with that one to keep the Black Knights from getting too big a lead in the series. Right now, men's cross-country is the only team with a win so far. But the Mids can close that gap if they pick up wins in that rugby match as well as in volleyball. Now, it's not unusual for Army to be a little bit ahead going into the winter sports season, but it's typically only by a win or 2, not 4 like it is right now. The record through 7 matches stands at 1-5-1. That tie was in men's soccer, and remember that the magic number is 13. So the Mids have a little work to do. The volleyball team has had a bit of an uneven year in conference play. Now, if you look at the overall record, it's 14-7, which is pretty good. But right now, the Mids are 6-6 in the conference with 4 games left, and those are against Colgate, Holy Cross, Lehigh, and Army. Now, all of them are at home, which is really good news because the team is pretty tough to beat on their own court. So if you are local to the Annapolis area, try your best to get over to the Wesley Brown Fieldhouse and make some noise over the next couple of weeks. In a game like volleyball, momentum swings can play a big part in whether or not a team can nail down the win, and I've seen loud fan support be the difference maker on more than one occasion. These 4 matches won't be easy, so let's see what we can do to get out there and help the volleyball team run the table to finish out the regular season. And finally, we're going to finish up with swimming and diving. Both teams posted a couple of competitive wins against George Washington University, and the men also defeated UMBC. The Mids will welcome American University, Bucknell, and Lafayette to Lejeune Hall this weekend. The star meet against Army takes place on December the 7th at home. You may recall that the men's streak of 31 straight wins over the Black Knights came to an end last year. The Mids did get a measure of revenge by winning the Patriot League championship in that thrilling 4x100 freestyle relay. But you know they've had the date of this year's star meet circled on the calendar as soon as the schedule came out. Okay, that takes care of our sports update. Coming up next, we have our deep dive segment, and as I mentioned in the intro, we'll be joined by a Navy coach who has led his team to 6 Patriot League titles in 8 years. That includes a dramatic come-from-behind win last spring, so I know you'll want to stick around for that. Welcome back, everyone. You know, when it comes to winning Patriot League championships, you've heard me talk about both track and field and swimming and diving quite a few times. The men and women have been dominant in these two sports over the last several years. But one you may not be as familiar with has won 6 titles in 8 years and 9 overall. I've become a huge fan of this sport, and you only need to go back through the episode history to figure that out. My very first guest over 2.5 years ago was the director of the program, and today makes the 6th episode out of 56 where I've showcased this sport. If you haven't figured it out by now, I'm talking about rowing. And in today's deep dive segment, we'll be talking specifically about the women's rowing team. Our guest today was named the head coach of the program in the summer of 2015 after spending 14 years as part of the coaching staff at the University of Notre Dame in South Bend. In his very first season, he led the Mids to their 4th Patriot League title. They went on to post a 19th place finish in the NCAA championships in the spring of 2016, which is their highest ever so far. From 2017 to 2019, the team won 3 more league titles and picked up another in 2021 after COVID canceled the championships the previous year. After Boston University stopped the mid-streak of consecutive titles in 2022, the team bounced back to reclaim it in thrilling fashion at the 2023 Patriot League Championships. So joining us today to talk about how all that happened, as well as give us an in-depth look at the program, is the head coach of the Navy women's rowing team, Joe Schlosberg. Coach Schlosberg, thank you so much for joining me today on Navy Sports Central. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Carl. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So let's go ahead and get right into it. You came to Annapolis from Notre Dame.
Yes.
So I was a little bit curious as to when this Navy head coaching job first showed up on your radar. And what were some of the factors that came into play that led to you accepting the job when it was offered?
Sure. Actually, it was out in Sacramento, California at the 2015 NCAA Championships. I was there with Notre Dame, and Navy was also there. And there was actually a boat, a varsity 4 from Navy. I believe they finished 17th in the country that year. A very good finish for them. They were small, but they were scrappy. They were tough. They were keeping themselves in races which they really shouldn't have been in. And they were just being an absolute pest to a lot of other teams. And there was no idea that this job was going to open up, but that kind of put Navy on the radar, and the thought of working with those athletes that were just tough and scrappy, that's appealing. Mm-hmm. And as the summer went on after that, the position ended up opening up. And my boss at the time at Notre Dame was actually somebody who had coached here at Navy previously. So I was able to kind of pick his brain, and things started to happen. Mm-hmm. And I was very honored to be offered this position. It was probably late August when I was offered this position. So, I had to dive right in. Right. I'm glad I did.
Right. So obviously Notre Dame is an institution with very high academic standards, just like the Naval Academy. But even when you take into account the NCAA rules on practice time and when the athletes are available, I'm sure you noticed the difference between South Bend and Annapolis. Did you have to adjust your approach to coaching the mids given all the other competing demands that they had on their time?
Oh, gosh, yes. It took me a while to figure out what worked here. And I made mistakes. I will own that. I made a lot of mistakes. Within the first 2 years, I must have tried 3, 4, 5 different training approaches. And some would work for a little bit of time, some would not work at all. And I feel bad for looking back at those teams because they were my guinea pigs. I was trying to learn about the academy and learn the demands. And it's such a unique environment that you really do have to approach things differently. And so it took me a while to kind of figure out, play with some things and land on something. And I finally started to see things click with the training. The big thing here is that the Naval Academy is always evolving and changing. And I need to do the same with my training, mm-hmm. with my approach, because, we are one small part of this bigger mission, and they're trying to better themselves, and so we need to adjust to that and roll with the punches and still compete nationally. So it just, I can't be stuck in one mindset trying to do things the same way I did, 5, 8 years ago.
Right, right. Okay, so this past spring, I was watching the Patriot League championships on YouTube, and obviously it was a great final result there, recapturing the Patriot League title after Boston University kind of edged you out last year. Can you share your thoughts on your team's success and what were the keys to the success that resulted in them earning back that title?
Well, we had hit some speed bumps through COVID. I think leading up to 2022, 2023, we lost ourselves through COVID, kind of coming out of COVID. We lost who we were. We lost our culture. We were able to kind of stumble through the spring of 2021, and we just could not sustain it through the spring of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't smoke and mirrors, but there was a lot of duct tape and Band-Aids to just kind of hold ourselves together. So going into the championship last year, going into the entire year last year, we really left no stone unturned. I looked at everything. And if you're looking for one specific thing, it was definitely a change in culture.
Mm-hmm.
We really refocused on the idea of teammate self. It's mirrored here at Navy with shipmate self. And during that time we went through attrition. We lost some people that had been strong members of the team before.
Right.
But with that, people were forced to step up, and those that were here, they did. They bought in. They made great changes and pushed the program back on course, which I'm very happy about. But it was
Right.
it was a tough couple of years, and we had to kind of hit some low points in order to kind of start moving up again. So
Right.
It's a challenge.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, that's a nice segue into the next question I had for you, because obviously it was a real challenge to the mental toughness of the team having to deal with all of that. So actually, I had a great conversation with Coach Edwards from the women's triathlon team a couple of months ago. And we spoke about this whole notion of mental toughness. And I said, hey, is most of that inherent or can you develop it? And he firmly believed that you could develop it. And certainly in the triathlon, it's a big factor. But just as important in rowing, I got to imagine it is, because you're not out there necessarily on your own. You're out there doing one thing in unison with 7 other people, assuming we're talking about a crew of 8 here. Mm-hmm. So what's your take on that? And what are some of the things that you've been able to do to help sharpen up the mental toughness on your team?
I absolutely agree with Coach. Mental toughness can be developed, but I don't, we don't sit down and really talk about it. We go and we work through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that we're going to challenge our athletes and put them into situations where they need to perform, regardless of if they've had a tough week of training, or if they've gone through a week of midterm exams, or they've had to stand watch in the middle of the night before practice. This is a place, this being the boathouse, that they can come over as a release. Yes, they work hard, but they enjoy that. They find fun in it. With that, the expectation is that they give their best effort that day. So, they could be really beat up from a lot of different aspects of life, and they're going to come over here, and the expectation is that they give their all that day.
Mm-hmm.
With what we're asking. And along those lines, the second big part of it is that we try and make practice way harder than races. They have that support group with their teammates, but we challenge them. The water challenges them. Just life here challenges them, and we make sure that they understand what they're doing and why they're doing it, so that by the time we race, that's the fun part.
Right.
That's where they can go fast and enjoy and just kind of let it all out.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't sit there and necessarily talk about how to develop your mental toughness. We'll touch on some things, but it's more of like, let's put it to practice. Let's just get you out there and walk you through it. So you have to kind of learn through trial and error.
Right. Okay. Now I want to talk about that 1v8 grand final last spring. Okay. And just to set the stage for our listeners, last May, I believe it was, the Mids competed in the Patriot League championship, and Boston University was the defending champ. And so I guess by definition, you could probably consider them the favorite, although, it was probably just a coin flip in my mind. But going into the last race, the Mids were down by 3 points. So basically it meant, all right, 2,000 meters, first shell to the finish line takes home the trophy. I've watched that YouTube video at least 6 or 7 times. But the thing was, it didn't pick it up until about halfway. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of get your perspective on the first half of the race. Did it align with what your race strategy was? Were you satisfied with how the team started off? Can you take us through those first 1,000 meters?
Sure. So let me just say that I was a ball of nerves watching the race with everybody else. This is the one of the worst parts of our sport is that we can't call timeout. We can't make adjustments mid race. It is just like we send our boats out, and we hope that we prepared them as best we could on so many levels. So we knew that Boston was going to be fast, and we knew, as you had said, that it could be anyone's race, and we had no choice. If we were going to win the championship, we needed to win that race. That was it. The way the points had worked out up to that point, we needed to win. So off the start, we were okay, but BU was faster off the line, and they put themselves ahead. They were aggressive. They were trying to break contact with us and the rest of the field, but once they got their initial distance off of us, we were matching their speed. We just couldn't cut into their lead. The two boats, us and Boston, were pushing each other and starting to break away from the rest of the field, and that's really where the video started to catch up. Mm-hmm. And you saw that. We were there with them. We were moving with them, but we just weren't able to cut into the lead that they had. And at that point of the race, as we're looking through the first half, really, I was sitting there going, we absolutely need to stay locked onto them, or else there's no chance that we're going to be able to come back. And to that point, the crew did a great job to not lose contact, stay kind of connected with them, have a little bit of overlap with them, and put themselves into a really good position for the second half of that race.
Right. And along those lines, going into that third 500, you just as you said, Boston University just had that half a boat lead, roughly, it looked like to me. That brought to mind a question, and it has to do with when they tell you, okay, they have a 4 or 5 seat lead. Is that measured from the front, from the bow, or from the stern? In other words, are you counting seats from the back to see how far they are, or the front? I was never really sure about that.
So a 5-seat lead, it's from the bow. It's from the front of the boat there's a little white ball on the front of the boat. You could clearly see 5 of Boston's rowers in front of Navy's, and then the seats started to overlap. And from there, like if that grows too much, and I've watched my boat practice a ton. I've watched them race. I kind of knew the amount, if they really had to make an overwhelming charge, what sort of time frame we're looking at. And I'm trying to judge this relative to how Boston is looking and how they're moving. So it was, as I said, ball of nerves watching this race. But there was a moment heading into the last about 700 meters of the race. Our coxswain, our driver of the boat, knew that they had to make a move. They had to respond, and they did. And it was like that moment where the switch was flipped,
Right.
It's giving me chills just thinking about it. But you could tell that at that point, that Navy's boat made a change, made an adjustment, and started to attack. And that was the first time after there was that 5-seat lead that we started to move back into them. So we kind of took a lot of punches from them. We kind of stayed with them. And then finally, we started to get aggressive. And we started to build some momentum.
Well, I'll tell you what that reminded me of, and it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think you'll appreciate it. What I saw when the mids made that move was the rowing equivalent of shooting nitrous oxide into a car's intake manifold to make it go faster. That's what that looked like. You can exactly put your finger on the place on the video where that move started. And from there, it just looked like everybody else was moving in slow motion or maybe even moving backwards. So I was thinking, man, this is where all that training comes in, and it really is a difference maker. So getting back to developing the mental toughness and that sort of thing, I would like to know, in your mind, what is there one particular workout or is there a series of workouts that contributes to, in that last 500 meters, just that team being able to come together and finding that, that strength within them to basically win going away? I mean, they ended up winning by 3.5 seconds. Am I right?
Yes.
I mean, it was a significant win at the end of the day.
I think it's all of the workouts, from the hard sprint work to the long 6K work, which is over 20 minutes of hard intensity, to long steady state, to technical days. That's the secret. It's not a workout. It's all of them that prepared them for that moment, and I think the team did a great job of approaching every workout with a purpose. We didn't want to have any throwaway days, any throwaway strokes, and I'm glad we didn't. Yeah. It led to that moment where, I remember when I was a rower, when you had that moment where you finally built some momentum, and you finally started to move on another boat, the confidence grows, the energy grows. It's a game-changing moment, and you have to rely and have confidence on your training and have confidence on on your teammates and what they're willing to give to that moment. Right.
And just one other question regarding the workouts, because I had asked Coach Bagnall the same question. I want to see if I get the same answer.
Yeah.
Is there a particular workout that the athletes know benefits them tremendously, but they just don't want to do?
Yes. There are some that we have that I've been around here. This is my 9th year, and as I said, as I kind of figured stuff out, there were some workouts that we had names to, and so I'll run into alums now that we'll start talking, and they'll bring up those specific named workouts. And like, as I said, everything evolves over the years, but there's a couple that still we do, this year, we'll do next year, we'll do the year after, that people remember. They hit a little bit harder, and they don't want to do them, but they know that there's a big benefit to it. And I think that it's not desensitizing them to that, because they're fully aware that this work is hard and what they're doing is hard, but we can step back after they do it. Within the workout, we can step back after the workout and say, like, hey, this is going to help, and it's going to help, and here's how.
Right.
So and again, we try and set them up with that sort of focus, regardless of the intensity of practice. It's everything that we do is leading them to the speed and the sprint.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Coach Bagnall referenced what he called third deck Fridays. And he said his guys just were not there. He said that his guys just were not very fond of that one, but the results speak for themselves based on how they've been doing.
So that we do a lot of our hard work on that same room, which is the third deck erg room. It just happens to have the biggest number of rowing machines there.
Right.
So last year, my team started to call it the jungle, just because it was loud, it was hot, it was a nasty place to be. Played a little Guns N' Roses every once in a while.
Right.
It.
I love it.
But it's there's just right now a lot of our challenging work is we start the week off with something challenging on Mondays, and it just kind of sets the tone for the week. So that's one of the days we have that third deck. Right. Is Monday. So absolutely, I'm with Coach Bagnall on that.
Right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take a short break now. But before we do that, I did want to give you all a couple of ways to stay up to date on Navy sports. The first is to join the Navy Sports Nation group Facebook page. I've got a link to that in the show notes. Just click on it, answer a couple of questions, and you'll be good to go. The second way takes even less time. Just hit the follow button on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast right now. It can be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. It doesn't matter. Once you do that, every episode will be downloaded to your directory when it's released, and you can listen to it whenever you're ready. So please consider becoming a member of our group, and you can actually tap that follow button right now to show your support for the podcast. I'm looking forward to having you join us. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back to Navy Sports Central. Carl Darden here with you, and I'm joined by Coach Joe Schlosberg of the Navy women's rowing team. Coach, we're going to go ahead and continue with the rest of the conversation here in a minute, but I always like to invite our guests to kind of share something either about themselves or maybe a cause that they support that's important to them, just as a way of saying thanks for jumping on the show here. So the mic is yours. Go ahead and fire away.
I guess, Carl, the thing I can touch on is that I've been very fortunate to be able to coach at the Naval Academy. I had a wonderful experience, 14 years at the University of Notre Dame, and the group of people there that I got to work with, both student athletes and the people in the athletic department, the alums. I thought it was a fantastic situation that I didn't think I could find anything like that. And I was really blown away. And I continue to be blown away as I meet more and more people associated with the Naval Academy, the family, the alumni group, the students I get to work with each day. It's such a unique experience. It's a challenging experience. Time demands it's tough.
Yeah,
but it's a good tough. And as I said, the alumni, and this is not patting you on the back. It's just it's the truth. The alumni group is just it's outrageous. I love getting to meet the alums of this boathouse and the alumni of the school, because the lives you have had to lead are exciting. They are just unlike a typical path within everything, and the spirit. That's the thing, is like the alums of this place have a spirit to them that is it's fantastic. It just brings a smile to my face. So, not a cause or anything. I'm just blessed to be here, and I hope to continue to do what I need to, developing great rowers, great people, great leaders of the future from my end, so that and put together some great performances so that I can keep doing this for a while.
All right, yeah, well said. And along those lines, over the last 8 years or so, you've had some terrific athletes at Navy, and one of them had a pretty good summer as well, even after she helped you win that Patriot League championship, and that was Lauren Day. She was part of that U23 women's 8 crew that won the world championship in Bulgaria. So I'm always kind of curious to know how that process works, how that selection process works. Was she identified even before the season started? If so, was there anything in particular that you worked on with her to kind of get her ready for nationals, all that sort of thing? Because I assume that once she gets to a nationals, she still has to compete for a seat. Am I right? I mean, is that how that works?
Yes. So
okay. So yeah, I'm curious if you could walk us through that.
So I was fortunate to talk in late April with the coach who would be in charge of this U23 team. She's the head coach for Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was at a race we were at, and she started asking me about Lauren. Lauren had put her name in numbers wise for speed on a couple of different standardized tests, kind of put her right in the mix of this field of people that could be selected. I had spoken very honestly with the coach about, Lauren's a great athlete. She's very raw and new to the sport relative to a lot of other people that they may be considering, but Lauren's going to work. And, your guess is as good as mine, because I don't know who's sitting out there as a potential that could challenge her in this selection camp. So that was late April that this kind of came on our radar, and we were from Navy's side of things, we weren't going to do anything different with Lauren's training. Her training was for our Patriot League championship and then setting us up for the NCAA championship. So we weren't going to change any of that. We won the Patriot League, and then got to go to the NCAA championship. So she got 2 more weeks of rowing and training there. And then while her competitors, future teammates for this U23 camp, while they got to take a break, maybe just be able to train and row, Lauren went to Leatherneck. So for those that don't know, that's the primary mechanism that's which midshipmen are evaluated for their potential to serve successfully as officers in the Marine Corps.
Right.
I think I stated that pretty well.
Yep.
So she was in the field. She was doing stuff, and it wasn't rowing. She was able to. Fortunately, they have some rowing machines where she was stationed, and she could kind of just stay in touch with the machine and the rowing movement. But she was busy doing some other stuff for a few weeks.
Right.
So with summer training, it was something she had to do, and so working through a lot of people helped Lauren get to where she needed to be able to even try out for this selection camp. And so she spent a few weeks at Leatherneck, went right out to camp in Oklahoma City, and got right to it. And as far as I know, Lauren was challenged a lot. But I think that she proved herself. Clearly, she had made the under 23 8, the top vote there at camp, and she did what she needed to earn her seat and hold it. And that's all we can hope for.
Yeah,
and it was special. It's a wonderful thing. So I just feel very fortunate that we were able to get everything aligned to make that a possibility.
Right. And for those listeners who don't know, she's not the first either. I mean, obviously, a few years ago, you had Alexandria Valenci-Martinson come through, and she won not just one, but 2 medals at the 2021 under 23 championships. I think it was a gold in the 8s.
Correct.
And a silver in the 4s. Am I right? Okay.
Correct.
So, I get that athletes are different, right? And you see that all the time. But I was wondering if you could point to a specific thread that the 2 rowers might have in common that allowed them to step on the national and then subsequently the world stage like that.
Lauren and Alexandria are both very talented athletes. Athletes from other sports who became great rowers. Alexandria came over from basketball. Lauren was a lacrosse player. And really the common thread between the two, aside from both being incredibly humble They had this drive to be better, the drive to be as fast as individuals and, more importantly, fast as teams.
Mm-hmm.
And they put the work in to support that talent and drive. All those things put them into a position to succeed on the world stage. And it's amazing to think, as any athlete would feel when they're in international competition, they're on the world stage. There's going to be nerves and stuff, but again, if we're doing what we're supposed to from our end of things, our practices leading up to that harder are things that they have to manage here, day-to-day life at the Naval Academy. Is it harder? In that moment where you're going as hard as you can down the race course, it might not seem like some things are harder, but all of that, all of their things, all the training that led up to those moments, you hope as a coach, you give them the right tools, you give them the confidence in themselves, that they can do their thing, makes boats go, and both of them were able to do that and then some.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, thanks for sharing that, Coach. So these last couple of questions here, I'm going to kind of have you just answer them together if you like. And in fact, you touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of what you have to do to kind of keep things moving forward with each class that comes through. So as a coach, you know that, especially with the success that you've had over the last several years, six championships in 8 years, several in a row. One of the things that can kind of creep into a program can be complacency. All right. And I was wondering, what are some things that get your antenna up and kind of triggers your spidey sense in terms of whether or not, okay, complacency is starting to kind of creep in? And what are some things that you do to keep it at arm's length so that you can continue to grow your program the way you want to?
Sure. I actually think that looking back on our, kind of working through our time with COVID, through the shutdown of 2020 with all sports, and then coming back and trying to navigate things for the 2020, 2021 academic year, and then moving forward, we did run into that complacency as a team, and we had to navigate a whole lot in terms of what we could do realistically working together. It was a challenge, and we had to, again, kind of relearn some things. One of the things that we had to relearn is that we're always trying to be better. We're always trying to grow as people and as athletes. And as I had mentioned before, the Naval Academy is always changing, and we do as well. While we may not reinvent the wheel, we'll tweak old things and try new ones. And the new ones may not work. And that's okay. The team understands that nothing is given. We have to earn it, and that goes a long way. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the culture that we have put in place and continue to evolve and understand. And it's the athletes and their buy-in within that situation. I think that we could easily have a group of people that are over here getting a good workout in, and then, hey, they're okay with that. But they understand that doesn't align with the bigger goals of the program and the goals of the athletes themselves. So it's always just trying to make sure that we have the right goals in place, and that our mission is moving us in the right direction with things.
Right. Okay. Hey, there's one question that kind of popped up as we were talking, and I thought about it, and I said, the rowing program is the one sport, well, there's probably more than one, but this one in particular that I follow quite closely does not have that rivalry with Army, because West Point doesn't have rowing as a varsity sport. But it was Coach Friedrich who told me that it is a club sport there for the men. Do the women have it as a club sport also?
They do. And we were fortunate handful of years ago, I want to say 2017, 18, 2019, maybe as well. We were able to connect with their club team during our spring training trips and lined up. And we could have our own little Army-Navy race. And so we did. And hopefully being the school associated with water, We showed that we were. But it was a fun moment within the sport because, as you said, it's not a varsity level sport. I got that little taste of what the Army-Navy rivalry is really all about, and it was special.
Yeah.
But I wish we could do it more often because it's a fun thing.
Right. Okay, last thing, wrapping up. Long-term vision for the program. In your perfect world, how would you like things to map out, say, over the next 5 to 10 years or so?
Long-term vision. Push the limits. See how far we can take this team. And then next year, we push further. And the year after, further. Putting Navy's name back into the national conversation.
Right.
I understand that we're on a different path than a lot of different teams out there and what they're able to do and what we're able to do. But that's a challenge. It's not a crutch or an excuse or anything. Again, I'm going to push us and the team is going to push and see how far we can go and then try and beat that. And I love that. And we're going to embrace that and just continue to move forward. That's our plan.
All right. Yeah. And I will tell you I think the fact that based on what I've learned about the program across the board the last 2.5 years or so, I continue to be amazed at how many athletes you bring in there that had no rowing experience that all of a sudden are just like major players. And it's obviously a testament to the coaching staff and the program and so forth. So yeah, with that kind of track record, I don't see any problem with you achieving those types of goals. So I appreciate you sharing those with us. All right. Coach, this looks like a pretty good place to stop. So I wanted to thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today. I'm a huge fan, as you know, and I look forward to tracking your success into the spring. And we'll see how things go next May when the Patriot League championships roll around again.
Fantastic. Carl, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Take care. Okay, coming up next, we have our question of the day and mid-watch segments, so don't go anywhere. All right, thanks so much for hanging with us here on Navy Sports Central. Now it is time for our question of the day. So let's go ahead and check our responses to our last question. You'll recall that our guest was Warren Mazurek, who was a member of the Navy offshore sailing team, and he also ran the summer offshore sailing program when he came back to the Academy to teach. Here was the question. The Naval Academy has won the Kennedy Cup 15 times in offshore sailing. And by the way, that is the sports version of the NCAA championship. Now, on how many occasions did they win it in consecutive years? Was it A, just once, B, twice, C, 3 times, or D, 4 times? Looks like the most popular answer was D, 4 times. 68% of you liked that choice. Next was B, twice, with 25% going with that option. And then finally, 6% of you selected C, 3 times. There were no takers on D, which was 4 times. It turns out that the correct answer was C, 3 times, so congratulations to those of you who picked that one. The Naval Academy won the Kennedy Cup in back-to-back years in 2012 and 2013, and they also have a couple of three-peats as well. Those were from 1988 to 1990, and from 1980 through 1982. And by the way, Navy's 15 Kennedy Cups are the most won by any school. The University of Rhode Island is second with 9. Now here's our question for this episode. The Navy women's rowing team has had 2 varsity 8 crews inducted into the Navy Sports Hall of Fame. They were the 1V8 boats from 1992 and also 1994. How many individual rowers from the program have earned that distinction since 1980? Is it A, 8, B, 11, C, 14, or D, 18? Go ahead and give that some thought, and you can let me know your answers by going to the Navy Sports Nation group Facebook page. I will have it posted by the end of the day. All right, let's go ahead and wrap things up with our mid-watch segment. The female athlete we've been tracking is Avery Miller from the volleyball team. She had 42 assists in the Mids win over Lafayette 2 matches ago, and she also tacked on 6 kills and came up with 11 digs. Right now, Miller has 763 assists on the year, and she's averaging just under 10%. Believe it or not, she's actually got an outside shot at 1,000 assists for the season if the team can make a good run in the Patriot League tournament. If she can do it, it would mark the second time Miller has accomplished that feat. Last year, she came up with 1,122 assists. Jumping over to the men, we've got Kiefer Black from the water polo team. He had 3 goals and 3 assists in the men's most recent win against Bucknell. That gives him a total of 46 goals and 39 assists for the year for a total of 85 points. Black leads the team in all 3 of those offensive categories. At this rate, he's got a really good chance at finishing the season with over 100 points, and he also has 32 steals on the year. The water polo team has 4 games left, so they have a chance to improve on their position going into the Mid-Atlantic Water Polo Conference Tournament, which starts on November 17th. That's going to do it for this edition of Navy Sports Central. Thank you all so much for joining us. Now, if you like what you've heard, please be sure to hit that follow button wherever you get your podcasts, and remember to get the word to all the other Navy fans out there. Once again, I'd like to thank Coach Joe Schlosberg of the Navy women's rowing team for joining me today. It was great to have such an up-close and personal look into one of the programs that has quietly become one of the most consistent winners across all Navy sports over the last 8 to 10 years. Our question of the day continues to be a show favorite. You can get in on that by joining the Navy Sports Nation Group Facebook page and giving your answer to this week's question. I will pin it to the top so you don't miss it. And just a quick reminder, the views expressed on Navy Sports Central are my own and do not reflect those of the U.S. Naval Academy or Navy Athletics. By the way, the music used in Navy Sports Central comes to you courtesy of Audio Jungle. This is a great site for purchasing the rights to use the music from thousands of artists around the world, and those featured in the podcast will be credited in our show notes. Talk to you soon, everybody. Until next time, this is Carl Darden. Go Navy, beat Army.